Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown, beautiful Prince George, British Columbia. We are in northern British Columbia. Prince George is about 750 kilometers north of Vancouver, and it's only halfway down the province. I would say it's the center. The people in Vanderhoof would say, no, that's slightly over from us to the west, but about that, so it's a big province. Special guest today, her name is Christina Doll. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
So, tell us a little bit about you and your background. You are from here.
That's right.
And your families were here thousands of years ago because you're part of the not ceded territory of the Lheidli T'enneh. Mm-hmm. The Lheidli T'enneh Nation has the region here. And so tell me a little bit about your background, how you grew up on the Lheidli T'enneh Nation, and then, and all the other things that you have done, but starting with that.
For sure. So my grandparents, only one of them has been here a long time. Okay. The other three are immigrants, so they settled on Lheidli T'enneh unceded territory.
Right.
So my grandpa on my mom's side came from Belarus with his family.
From where?
Belarus.
Oh yeah, just by the Ukraine.
Yeah, by the Ukraine.
Yeah.
So he was in World War II along with his brother. Some things happened there that weren't great for them. My great aunts and my babushka ended up in work camps, so they decided it was time to leave.
Was the Second World War?
Second World War.
Yeah.
So they moved over and settled in Vancouver. Okay. And his wife, my Nana, she is from Ireland, so she grew up just below the Northern Ireland border. So she experienced a lot of tension as well with the IRA uprising. Yeah. So she met my grandpa being a nurse in World War II, and they ended up coming over together, getting married, having a family, settled in Vancouver. On my dad's side, my grandpa's family was from Baden-Baden in Germany, but they immigrated at least 80, 90, 100 years ago. They've been here a long time. They settled out east and then moved west, ended up in the Hazelton area, and his wife was from Ukraine. Okay. So she
from the Ukraine.
Yeah. So she moved over when she was quite young and settled in Winnipeg. And ended up here. So that's my family history. My mom met my dad actually through my aunt. They were best friends. So that was my dad's sister. They got married and moved to Prince George. So I was born and raised in Prince George. Yeah.
So, and I've had a number of people from First Nations, the different First Nations throughout the province, but I've always been interested in it because a couple of things, that you can relate to. I was born in 1940 in northeastern Holland during the Second World War. I remember well when I was 5 years old, we were liberated by the Canadians, and it made such an impression on me that I always knew that I would go to the land of my heroes. That's where I wanted to be, in Canada. And I tried to go when I was 17. They wouldn't let me then. Then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, and then for 2.5 years, and then I finally emigrated to Canada when I was 24, 1965, and and then came directly. I wanted to build a lumber mill. That was my dream. My first dream was going to Canada. Second dream was to build a lumber mill. Why? Because my grandfather was a master carpenter, and my dad managed a small lumber company. So that's the way it works there, is that you kind of follow the other ones, that were, and it was my passion as well. And, and so I came here to Canada in July of 1965 directly to the Greyhound station. You still know the old one sitting right a bit up the street here, 2-3 blocks away, and came off the bus with my suitcase, and I had exactly $25.47. But then what I did have, attitude, positive attitude, passion, wanted to be in Canada and be successful as a business person, and then I'm a hard worker, always have been, and that means success, or at least it gives you the best potential for success. And then I spent sometime here, and then I had an opportunity. I'm cutting through some of the areas that I did here, starting as a cleaner man and doing all this other kind of stuff that new Canadians, new immigrants do. I ended up in Watson Lake, Yukon, and I got the commitment of a share in a lumber mill in Watson Lake, and a 1/3 share if I managed it for 5 years. So I'm staying in a motel. I bought a motel, then had the sawmill, 100%, saving except for one, the sawyers were all First Nations from the area there. So and then have you been in Watson Lake?
I have not. No.
No?
I haven't had the good fortune of being that far north. Almost, but not quite that far.
Yeah, yeah, and the beautiful area as well. Gets pretty cold in the wintertime. I saw it 62 below, so and I was there for about 5 years, and then came back to Prince George, and then was then involved here, and finally started my company in 1975. It's the land of opportunity. There's no question about it. So you got your education here, and then I noticed also that you were at UNBC, got your marketing degree?
Not quite. No, my path to where I ended up was a little winding, I guess you could say. So I was granted a scholarship to attend UNBC.
Okay.
Luckily for me, otherwise I might not have gone to school, but I received a scholarship to attend, no tuition. So, not being a scientifically minded person, I settled on studying English literature.
Okay.
I took one business class, and I wasn't sure that was something I wanted to pursue, which
That's
is funny.
That's a good thing that you didn't pursue it. Because
Well, I sort of ended up in business, so
yeah.
It's funny that I took a roundabout way to getting there. But yeah. I studied English literature, realized you can't do much with that. So I applied to BCIT, the British Columbia Institute of Technology.
Right.
To become a broadcast journalist and
become what?
A broadcast journalist.
Yeah. So okay.
And so that was mainly because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I took an aptitude test, and it gave me a few options, one of which was broadcast journalism, and there were a couple of others. They said I could be a chef or an interior decorator. So I chose journalism just because I didn't really know, and I liked to write. And I liked interacting with people, so I ended up going to Richmond for a couple of years and studying at Burnaby.
Yeah, it's interesting to say. I have 2 daughters, and they were going through the same. They went to school and university. The one was at Simon Fraser University, the other one is UBC, and still didn't quite know which direction to go. So they took, I think we paid for doing a test. Is saying, what did you do that as to what would you be liking as a career? I thought it was a very good investment, actually. I forget how much it was, but it was well worthwhile because it gave you then a direction as to where to go. So many young people and even not so young people are not happy as to what choices they have made, or if they made a choice, then said, I don't know, and already after they've spent substantial time in the career, and then saying that this is really not what I want to do. Actually, I have a book that's coming out. You familiar with my books, actually?
I am, yes.
Did I give you a copy of it?
You gave me a copy of one of them, Against All Odds, I believe.
Okay, I'll give you the other one as well. Did I sign it?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to give you both of those, and I'm going to sign up for you. The other book that's coming out, it's on the way now, I think. Should be here, I believe, if not in the next 2 days, then early next week. And the title of the book is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And it's basically saying, find something you like any which way you can, either by getting exposure to what you think you like. Companies are quite accommodating, actually, is saying that I've had it in my company, I'm usually fairly open about it, is saying, if you want to get some exposure to entrepreneurship, I don't mind going for coffee with somebody or talking to somebody. I do a fair amount of presentations talking about careers in entrepreneurship, but also other things like some people like to get a career in being a musician or being whatever it is. But it's so important because on the other hand, there are so many people that say, I hate my job. And that would not be good because then it will affect the way you feel about things. And every day, if you're busy doing something you don't like to do, then it affects likely everything around you. And and that's not very good. So that's why I wrote the book about that, and there are a number of examples in the book. I'll give you a copy of that too as soon as we get it in the next week. But that was the purpose. That's why I did the book. So you did the test, then knew that. Did you then decide that's likely where I should go in terms of a career?
I decided it was something I would try out.
Yeah.
So I've always been someone who likes to try things, is willing to take on the risk of change, because I know that if it doesn't work out for me, I can try something else. So it was a starting point for me, and I did work as a broadcast journalist in Prince George for 5 years. I worked in radio.
Yeah, CKPG?
Not CKPG. I was trained in TV, but I decided to just go the radio path. So I worked for Vista, which is now the GOAT and Country 97, but previously was the Wolf and 94X. So that's when I worked there.
5 years.
Yeah, dating quite a while back now.
yeah, but still, that kind of laid a foundation of something you liked then to do?
It did. So I knew I liked to write, and speaking to your point about following your passion, I knew I liked to write. I didn't quite know what to do with that. So broadcast journalism seemed like a very good fit. I knew it wouldn't be forever though when I went to school. I learned through going to school about public relations. So that was my 5-year goal, was to transition out of journalism and into public relations. There just seemed to be more opportunity in the field and more jobs and better security, and maybe a bit more in terms of the brevity or like the scope of work that I would get to do. So I did eventually transition out. I ended up going back to school again because I'm a career academic, and I studied public relations through the University of Victoria, and that kind of led me in a different direction altogether. So
did you go to Victoria to do, or online?
I did it online. I was working as news director at the time, and
perfect, right?
Yeah, I couldn't really afford to take the time off to go to school, or I wanted to do my master's through Royal Roads, but I couldn't leave during the times they wanted me to leave. It was blackout time for ratings when I was in radio. So I ended up just doing a diploma program through UVic, but that opened the door to where I am now.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to just kind of go through whatever doors do open for you, because they may lead you to unexpected and wonderful places. Yeah. So I ended up in economic development by taking a job I really knew nothing about. Yeah. And it turns out it's the perfect fit for me. So I've been very lucky.
So if you kind of look back, your literary that you took at UNBC seems to have been a very good foundation. Mm-hmm. Because in order to be even on the radio, you have to be a good writer, but also a good communicator, which means the same, and you have to be a good communicator, and you seem to have both, so that already is a good foundation. And then, so then from there, did you go to the city of Prince George? At some point. So there was my journalism stint at the radio station for 5 years. Right. And I accepted a job at the external not-for-profit corporation for the city, which at that point did economic development for the city of Prince George. So it was called Initiatives Prince George, if you remember that organization. Yeah. So I was there for 3 years before they were brought in-house, or the function was brought in-house. So that was quite a while. I think I was probably involved in that in some form. Yeah, so it was quite some time ago, at least 7-8 years ago now, I would say. And I took a marketing and communications role.
But through that, I was introduced to economic development, and my role crossed over everything that my colleagues did. I reached out to someone to be my mentor because I had no experience in the field, and I very quickly learned that while marketing and communications play a role in economic development, I liked the broader umbrella of economic development. So when the organization closed and the function went in-house, I went to Northern Health for a year and did strictly communications. I was trained in it. I thought I should try it out. Turns out I like economic development a lot better. For me, it's the connection to the community. It's making a difference. It's being able to see the impact of my work.
Yeah.
And with communications, it's just not quite the same feeling. The work is very interesting, but I'm writing news releases and issues notes and writing letters and not getting to do those projects that might impact positive change in a community.
Right.
So I ended up at that point applying for a position at the city. So I was there most recently for 6 years.
For 6 years at the city, and the position was then?
Workforce Development Officer. So my focus was on attracting and retaining people to Prince George.
Okay.
So I developed a number of programs and working groups and worked with employers to try and market the city and attract people here and get them to stay here.
Attract people here to live, or to also in terms of entrepreneurship and businesses that may be all of that?
All of it. So the major campaign I had a hand in developing when we were still with Initiatives Prince George was called Move Up Prince George. So it's been running for a very long time. I believe it's still running. But the goal there was to show all the positive sides of Prince George, to show the opportunity here, because there really is a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I remember when I lived in the Lower Mainland, a lot of people weren't even willing to consider moving to a smaller community.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a barrier there that we had to break.
Yeah.
We targeted larger cities. We didn't want to target communities with smaller populations because they already have out-migrations. So we know that there are people in larger cities who are underemployed or unemployed, and we have the opportunity here. We have the affordability, we have the amenities of a larger city, but we also have the outdoors. It's really a wonderful place to live. So,
especially before COVID, right? Mm-hmm. You know, so then after COVID, smaller communities are a lot more attractive than they were before.
They seem to be.
They seem to be. And then the other part is who is interested in sitting in their car for an hour and a half to get to work, right? So
well, my commute is
or longer.
6 to 10 minutes. You can't complain about that.
Yeah. And the same as me. You know, it takes me, depending if the light is red, I said 5 minutes or 6 minutes to come. And then it's a beautiful area here, right? So all around us is lots of nature. You know, you name it, it's all here. Within 50 miles, we probably got 100 lakes all around us. You know, so it's beautiful. Yeah.
It offers a lot for people. So our goal was to showcase that, and we wanted to make sure it was very based on local experiences. So everyone on our website, in our marketing materials, in our ads, on our social media, they were all local people. So we made sure to seek out those really good stories, and they told them in their own words through blogs, or we would talk to them about their life and their experience in Prince George, and that became the basis for ads. I just saw one actually when I was down in Vancouver, so I know it's still running. But I have a number of experiences where people told me they saw an ad and that made them think about Prince George or even move here. So we know that people saw it, and we know that it worked. The other side of it was retaining those people. So we didn't want them to just come for a year and leave. We want them to stay and make this their home and help grow our economy and add to the vibrancy that's already here. And so I also developed a Young Professionals Network. That I'm not sure if that's still running. I just developed it right before leaving the city. But the goal there was to bring people who are new to the city or new to their careers together so they could make those connections that would make them feel comfortable in the community, and that would ensure that maybe they stay for a little longer.
When I came in 1965, it was then considered to be a boom town, you know, and it was always a question of, you know, when did you come here and when are you leaving? Fort McMurray, something like that, especially here on George Street, you know. So, but it has changed a whole lot, and what has added to it a lot is the infrastructure that we have in the city. The new swimming pool behind us, obviously, CNC, not only in Prince George but around the region, and then the same as UNBC, the freestanding University of Northern British Columbia. It's amazing. And then the other benefit of it is that most of the people that study here stay here in Northern BC, which is very important.
And that's part of the reason that the university exists, especially the Northern Medical Program. I know I studied at UNBC. I did leave for a couple of years. I know a lot of my friends left as well, but people have a way of finding their way back to Prince George, especially when they want to settle down and have families. It's just a really good, close, tight-knit community for that. I find having experience living in a bigger city is just very friendly, a lot less stress here.
Yeah.
Expenses are still lower than major cities.
By comparison.
In terms of career growth, it's astronomical.
Yeah.
I would not have been in some of the positions I was able to be in at a younger age if I'd stayed in the Lower Mainland. There's too much competition. So here you have the chance to learn, to grow, and I find people are really open to mentoring you as well. So I had a lot of mentors along the way who really helped build me up and help me carve my own path.
Yeah, and so you was with the city for 6 years. Then what happened?
And then I decided it was maybe time to take my skills and use them at a broader level. So Pacific Economic Development Canada is a new agency in BC for BC. It comes out of Western Economic Diversification, so also known as WD. So they ended WD and opened PacifiCan and PrairiesCan, so Prairies Economic Development Canada. Right. So we are responsible for representing and speaking for the West and supporting the West. Where I work, it's specifically for BC, and I'm based in Prince George, so we work with people in the North. And
so are they a relatively new organization, right? And the opportunities are in economic development?
That's our goal. So we are an agency that was developed to support economic growth in the region.
Yeah.
Previously, WD was based only in the south, so in the Lower Mainland. Right. So in November of last year, they opened 8 new locations across BC.
Okay.
With people mainly from within the region. So there's been real care put to making sure that the people who are in these positions have experience in the region and they know where they're based. They have those connections with the community. Our goal is to first learn about what the opportunities and challenges are in the North. Right. I'm very familiar with Prince George. I've been all across BC, but I don't have that necessarily that in-depth knowledge of each community. And that's what we're hoping to form kind of in the early stages. So we're doing a lot of stakeholder outreach, just going and talking to communities, seeing what their needs are. But we are also at the same time still delivering our core programs. So we have programs through which we deliver funding. And the funding is for projects that stimulate economic growth in BC, and we have a few focus areas that we like to look at within that.
Right, and so the region, you said they set up 8 regions. So your region here is how big?
I would say mine's fairly big. So we have 8 offices across BC.
Yeah.
We're part of the North, so we have an office in Prince George, we have one in Fort St. John, and we have one in Prince Rupert. Okay. So I essentially cover from 70 Mile north to, I cover Mackenzie, just before the Pine Pass, and then out to the Alberta border. Right. And then I also go a bit into the Nechako area, so up to Burns Lake.
And then to the other side, up to Burns Lake. Okay. So that's a big area.
It's a big area.
Yeah. So that's good. So you still getting your feet wet, and and obviously it's a new program. So you report to head office BC, who then reports to Ottawa, I presume?
So part of our role is to learn about what's going on the ground in our region, and then report back to Ottawa. So we provide that more direct connection, whereas before we just had our main office in the Lower Mainland. Right. And so they weren't in region, so now we're in region and we can actually talk directly to people and hear what they have to say. And then part of what we do is then feed that back to Ottawa. Another part, so we're pathfinders as well. So if people come to us and maybe their project isn't a fit for the funding programs that we offer, we will do our best to try and link them up with other programs, either internally in the federal government
Right.
or externally, just through our knowledge of service providers in the region.
Right.
We're conveners as well, so we bring people together to accomplish economic development goals. And then, of course, investors, so that's through our programs. We offer repayable and non-repayable contributions to
Right.
projects, and it's depending on which program you apply to and
Right.
what your project is and what your organization is. So
Right.
there's a variety of fits.
Right. And obviously, you must have a lot to do with the forest industry because they're in very deep trouble, right, in BC. A lot of companies have shut down, I think 45 sawmills and probably 7 pulp mills, probably a few more to go, so.
Yeah, part of our role will be to sit back and listen. So the province has come in, and then if they request our assistance, we're there to help.
Yeah.
Through our programs, we do support advancement in the natural resources. So
Right.
if there's a project that is, say, advanced manufacturing, it could fit within one of our programs.
Right.
So our programs are all available on our website, and if there's a project that's a fit,
Yeah.
part of what we're doing is listening and learning and seeing if we do need to change our programs. Our programs are legacy programs from WD. So we're working within existing structures, and then part of what our role is now is to listen and see if maybe we need to make some tweaks or
Right.
what we could add.
So people that kind of looking for the programs, what is the website again that they should look at?
So I believe the website is pacifican.gc.ca, but if you just go on Google or any search engine that you prefer and just write in, I'll say Pacific Economic Development Canada.
Okay.
PacifiCan is just a blend of that. It's an easier way to say it, but if you type that in, it should pop up.
Yeah.
Our main programs that we manage out of our offices in the north include the Regional Innovation Ecosystem Program.
Okay.
We also call it RIE, but I don't like to use too many acronyms.
Yeah.
And then Community Economic Development and Diversification,
Right.
or CEDD. And those two are ones that we will run through our offices. There are other programs. We can be the initial touch point for them, but there are different teams that manage those. So we will then pathfind for you internally to find the right person for you to chat with if your project may be a fit.
So how do you communicate then to do you do presentations or that kind of stuff in the region? Do you talk to, I know you're still kind of getting into the program, but are they talking to Chamber of Commerce, Rotary Club, all those kind of organizations?
So we have started outreach.
Yeah.
Initially, it was just a touch base and email. The three of us who are senior business officers in the north, as well as my director, we have connections, and we just added a business officer as well. So we're sort of past the first stage of outreach, which was email saying, hello, this is who we are. Nice to e-meet you, or nice to reconnect. We're in a new role. And I'm currently moving into more face-to-face engagement. So my plan is to start touring the region and actually meeting with people face-to-face. But we are community focused. We have business programs. They are managed by a different team.
Okay.
And that's our business scale up and productivity program. So we could be an initial touch point, and then we would pass you on to the right team.
Okay.
But I will be going out over the course of the next few months and meeting with whomever I can meet with within the communities that I serve.
So what I've been doing is been very active in the nearly 60 years that I've been here. My company, Brink group of companies, we are in lumber manufacturing, both in Prince George, Vanderhoof, and Houston, BC. And then we are also in interior warehousing and logistics. So we're probably the largest warehousing company in northern BC. And then we're also doing real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial. And but I do a fair amount of public speaking or doing presentations. So I was out in Smithers, Telquai, I think, did a presentation to a group of people. Economic development, part was government, part was regions, part was First Nations. And then I did also another presentation at a group virtual that was in Burns Lake, substantially First Nations. And because First Nations now, and that's why I'm trying to make the connection, is that a lot of stuff is happening with First Nations. because they obviously are controlling a sizable portion of the forest, the annual allowable cut in the province, and are searching not only for having the rights to that, but also in terms of economic development and all things that they have not done as much of as there is potential. And so I believe they have real potential in those areas. And the same with communities, like I talk a lot of times to community leaders, maybe McKinsey, Prince George, Fraser Lake, Vanderhoof, Houston, in terms of economic development, and especially as it relates to the forest industry, but also other areas. So the whole region has such amazing potential. The natural resources that we have here are unique, and then our location is unique in terms of Prince George in particular is the center of northern British Columbia in terms of access to rail, air, road, and ideally located in terms of to the United States or to the East Asia, and then obviously Europe at the other side, and and all of that is still developing really as we speak. And I think a lot more is going to happen in the next 20, 25 years. Mm-hmm. And so I see immense opportunity here.
And that's why we're excited to be in region and to be able to have those conversations with people and see what role we can play and where we fit. Yeah. So we're definitely in those early stages of chatting with everyone. We've had people reach out to us with potential inquiries. So we're hoping to see some things happen as we continue to move forward.
Yeah. So talking about you a little bit more then, so that's a fairly new role for you. Mm-hmm. Then all the other work that you did before kind of all falls into that category perfectly. And, and so it gives you the skill sets already developed over all these years that made you familiar not only with the whole province of British Columbia, but also broader, nationally, and then in particular regionally.
Definitely. So I've, in my personal as well as my work life, had the opportunity to travel across BC. Yeah. And I just take a personal interest in travel or getting to know my region as well. So if I'm not working in a region, I'm probably traveling there. My vacation plans this year include Smithers and Terrace. So
nice.
There you go. But I've also had the chance to interact with communities across Canada and internationally as well. Yeah. So definitely my career path did lay the foundation for this, but I didn't know it was laying it for this.
No, it just happened that way.
It happened.
Yeah, but again, in relation to my book, that finding your passion, living the dream, if somebody would ask me, okay, John, are you living the dream? Yes, I am. Lumber industry is not much fun sometimes. It goes up and down a lot. But, yeah, I am living the dream. Mm-hmm. And it came from, my grandfather was a master carpenter, as I told you before, and my dad managed a small company. So there was no question in my mind that I would be in the lumber business. And then I always was hoping, to become an owner myself of a mill. Although academically I was not a success story. I failed grade 3. And I failed grade 7 3 times, and then I started working when I was 14, and got trained as a furniture maker.
I think that just really speaks to how everyone has a different path.
Yeah.
I kept going to school because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and by taking a chance on a job I was sure I wasn't qualified for, I ended up getting that job, and it helped me discover my passion. And I don't think a lot of people are lucky to discover their passion necessarily, or they might stumble into it. Maybe there's intent, but I had no intent. It just sort of happened for me, so I feel very fortunate.
But you sound so natural because you have the confidence and that you're a good communicator. And I wasn't at the time, and I found out, I kind of felt as I had been a failure because in Holland, if you leave school at 14 and you become a laborer, and I'd say that with honor because I think that's good, is, having a career, hands-on career, being a furniture maker is, it's a very good career, but in Holland it works this way. If you want a job in management, then usually you say, okay, where are your diplomas? If you don't have any, or if you did grade 7 3 times, then that's really not very good. And so I kind of felt like a failure. And so my dream then was to go to the land of my heroes, start over new again to prove to myself that I could do it. And then the dream was to start my own lumber mill. And I already, when I was a cleanup man and piled lumber, I was already drawing the letterhead for my business, Brink Forest Products, when I came home and was working on my business plan, business idea. I read everything that I could get my hands on to understand the industry and to work towards owning that mill. That brought me to the Yukon. Got 1/3 ownership after 5 years. Unfortunately, that didn't work out so well. Their ideas were different than mine. So I left there after 5 years, gave it all away for the dollar, came back to Prince George, started over again in the forest industry, became a cost accountant for one of the larger mills here, sales manager, and then wrote a business plan for my current operations in 1975. And actually that same business plan that I wrote then, the people around me look at it sometimes and say, we are still following the same business plan. But it took me till I was 57 when I walked into a store on 4th Avenue, business books on 4th, and I found this book. I opened the book. It was Driven to Distraction, and it was about ADHD. I'd never heard of it, and I said, oh my God, that's me. So I spent a fair amount looking at the book and going through it, and even the owner said, you're gonna buy it, or well, obviously I would. And then I wrote in it in Dutch because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am, and because there's a stigma attached to it, it's a mental disorder, some people say, and so that kind of explained to me, the distractions. I was not very good sitting in school. I lived in a different world. I'd be sitting there in school. I lived elsewhere. I had no idea what was going on. And, and then when I found the book, started finding out more about it, and then talked about it more and more, especially in the last 10 years. And then started speaking about it. Then I wrote the one book. I don't know which one you have. Is the first one that I wrote is this one here, Against All Odds, and it's basically saying with all the challenges, and as you already know from your background, either Belarus or the Ukraine now in particular, very difficult times. Even then, where your family were there, they went through a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties, and obviously still today. And but the same in Holland. I'd grown up during the Second World War, being born in 1940. My dad was drafted into the Dutch Army before I was born, in April of 1940, and they didn't see him for 5 years. They didn't know he was dead or alive because he bombed Rotterdam. And the last place that he was seen was in Rotterdam. And my mom had 3 kids. I was the youngest. And then, one sister 1 year older, brother 2 years older. And things were very, very difficult and very rough. saw far too many things that we should not have seen, and and then the winter from 1944, 1945 was the Hunger Winter. A lot of people died, especially young kids and older people that were vulnerable. And so I probably was affected by PTSD and the inner child issues. I had counseling for that well into my 50s actually, and I write about those kind of things. So, but this book is about not so much about hurrah, hurrah, John, but more in spite of it all, staying the course, and then showing all the good, bad, and the ugly that go along the way. And I took me 80 years to live it, and then 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. So I'm going to give you a copy of this one.
Thank you.
And then the other one, the more I got known about ADHD, the more I thought I have to write about this, because again, not very well understood. Virtually, Christina, is not a day that goes by that I not hear from somebody that either is affected by it or think they are, or have somebody in their family circle or their friend circle. So what I'm saying is this book was written with the idea in mind that ADHD is a superpower, in my opinion, and I could not have done what I'm doing, even not now, running 3 big companies and probably another 6 or 7 other companies, then obviously being the probably the largest podcaster in Western Canada, if not Canada. We do usually about 3 podcasts a week, and then I'm writing books. This is the 3rd one coming out in the next 2 days. It's on its way of being printed in Winnipeg and should be arrived. We just got notice this morning, actually, it's on its way. We'll get you a copy of that. Finding Your Passion. And then I'm writing another book, and that is already working on that. I want to do one a year. So the title of that is Living Young, Dying Old. And so what does that mean other than the obvious? Well, how can you stay healthy? Because at the end of the day, it's all about quality of life, not about age. Some people are old when they are 40, or they have decided to be old or 45. I'm going to be 83 in 3 months. I'm still going to the gym. I'm going to compete next year and next spring. And in 1917, 1918, just before COVID, I competed here locally, bodybuilding and physique, came in 2nd in bodybuilding, 3rd in physique, qualified me for the provincials, came in 3rd in physique, 2nd in bodybuilding, qualified me for the nationals in the Arnolds. And then obviously everything stopped because COVID came. And then I want to do that again and start doing that. So I go to the gym, and probably train about 5 to 10 hours a week, and try to stay healthy. But the whole idea is to, living young to me means living healthy. That means positive attitude, having a passion, and work ethic. It's all part of that. And the other one is the obvious: don't smoke, don't drink, do sugar, and on and on. So that book deals with those issues, but making it less complicated, but more talking about, in interviewing, in particular, people that have been quite successful on, living healthy and long, those kind of things. And that book is important to me.
Health is important.
How about, what are you doing? You in good shape?
Health focus. I've always been very active.
Yeah.
So my mom did get quite ill when I was young.
Yeah.
And she's dealt with various health issues her whole life. And so I've always been very health focused. I know I probably can't ward off anything that's genetic, but if I can stay healthy, then potentially I can delay or prevent things from being an issue for me. So I'm very active outside. Luckily, as we've mentioned, it's a beautiful area. So I like to paddleboard and kayak and hike. I do go to the gym. I had a little minor surgery a few months ago because that's kind of thrown me off. But, even just getting up, walking, gardening, just doing those things on a daily basis. And then I do focus on a healthy diet. I'm very health conscious that way. So I think it's really important to eat well and fuel your body with appropriate foods and drink a lot of water, those sorts of things.
Yeah, and all of that is what the book is all about. It is not about trying to be an Olympian or being a champion or blah, all that. I simply do that because I'm goal oriented. I like to work with a trainer, because it gets me to the gym. I'm not trying to be important, but my life is all about meetings. And then when I have a meeting, I have a commitment, I have to be there. And the other part is that my wife, she is we've been together over 40 years. She is vegan, and I'm probably 80-20, and I try to do the obvious. I don't drink really, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs other than minor ones that for whatever reason, but relatively minor. And and the other part is I limit the amount of sugar and all of those kind of things. And then I may go to the gym, but as long as you're physically active, for about 20 to 30 minutes a day, then that to me is staying physically healthy, and then being aware of diet. And so I think about diet in terms of, what's good for me, and so.
I didn't eat meat actually for a decade. And then I found out I couldn't eat dairy or eggs. So I've added chicken back in, but I'm about probably 80-20 as well now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because my wife doesn't eat red meat or no meat as part of a vegan. And, for me, because of our relationship, that I got used to not drinking dairy at all. I never even think about it. It's just not part of my diet. I like eggs. I eat usually 4 eggs in the morning and an avocado. And then I'm usually mid-morning, I maybe have a protein drink of some sort, healthy soup. And then depending on if I'm getting ready for competition, I'm very conscientious about a main meal, and but I've always think about food and staying healthy. Sleep, another one is important in my opinion. Try to sleep 7.5, 8 hours a night.
Yeah, sleep schedule is really important. So I try to stay on schedule. I need at least 8 hours a night, or I don't function.
So have you done this for a long time? Was that because of your experience with your mom and your awareness of it?
That's probably what prompted it.
Yeah.
But I've always not felt well when eating certain foods. I had stomach aches as a child. So there were a few different things, and it just hit a point where I wanted to find out why I wasn't feeling well, and I wanted to feel better. And I felt that food was the answer. So I've done a lot of research, and it's been over years. It's hard to change your diet when we're used to eating a lot of processed foods, and there's fast food all around us. And I never really ate a lot of that, but I took a greater interest in what foods made me feel good, and I focused on those. I learned that my body was telling me all along what didn't work for me. I just wasn't listening. So now that I listen, I don't have the feelings of sickness that I used to have.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't know, for you, I'm sure it's the same as for me, is that I don't need the junk food, really. I have a bit of a sweet tooth. I have to kind of watch that, but normally same with salt. I use very little salt. I use a little bit on my eggs, but otherwise I don't use much salt. I have really no sugar in my house, and I'm aware of that. And, and then, all the other things, I'm so used to not having them or not having that I never even think about it, so never even comes to my mind.
Yeah, I found that as well. I cut out salt and I reduced sugar and I transitioned to dark chocolate, and I just don't really crave those things anymore. I find if I do eat them again, then I start craving them.
Yeah.
So once they're cut out, it's kind of mind over matter, because you have those cravings, but once you find foods that you like and you're able to eat those on a regular basis, I find those cravings go away.
So quality of life is critical, and I think that the earliest somebody can start thinking, that's really the purpose of the living young, dying old, is really saying that if at nearly 83, I'm still very active, I can run circles around a lot of people, I still work probably 12 hours a day and enjoy it, and doing all these other things, and part of that is because I've been active and I'm careful in terms of what I drink or eat, and it's that lifestyle. As long as most people do are aware of it, then that will give them likely a longer life, but even more importantly, a healthy one. And being still active once you get older, is critically important, I believe.
Definitely. And yeah, you're doing great for 83, so you're living proof that it works.
And it does work, right? And so are you, that, obviously you've developed a lifestyle that is very conscientious of, same as my wife, so that to her, her lifestyle, that's, it's important to her.
And it plays into my career because I have a busy schedule as well. So if I feel good, I'm better able to show up day to day. It all ties in together.
All ties in together, and that makes you feel good. So as you now look forward and having done the different levels of involvement that all added towards this career that you just fairly recently started, with that new organization that likely will be there for quite a while because it's a federal program which has been in place for a long time but has now been expanded to recognize other parts of the province. It's probably a good one, it's a real fitting one for you. So, makes your life very interesting. It sounds to me like your careers have always been very interesting, from the radio station so your communication skills, how did you develop those, or did you have those naturally?
I think it's a combination. I think I've always liked to read, and I have always been able to put words together. Math and science are not my thing, and kudos to everyone who's really good at those two things. They just didn't work with how my brain functions. But writing words made sense to me. And I think that speaks to what we were talking about with the passion. And my passion was always arts-based or writing. And how can you make something out of that? And I so happened to find something that I could do with it. First with journalism, so writing stories. Yeah. And with communications, I did actually go to school for it. So there are some technical skills you need to develop as well. But I think there's that natural aptitude. And it's playing into what you know are your skills and how can you make those work for you in your career.
So your schooling at BCIT focused in particular on communication skills development. So did it also include, how long was the course that you did there?
It was 2 years, but I took a co-op placement, so that's how I ended up back in Prince George after moving down there. And that helped me hone my skills and develop them further. So once you hit your third semester, you were able to get a full-time job, and that could count as final credit toward completion of your diploma. And then the communications or the public relations diploma was another 2 years after that. Yeah. And that I did while I was working in journalism. And I've studied economic development too, but there's not really a path to working in the field. Yeah. A lot of people who work in it just sort of fall into it like I did. Yeah. You could have an economics degree, but that's not the same as economic development. So there is a certificate through the University of Waterloo, which I was able to take through working in the field. Right. But There's not much out there. There's a master's program as well, but you kind of have to just fall into it through your love of making a difference, through being tied into your community, through wanting to have an impact, through being a relationship builder.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the different steps that you took by coincidence or deliberately build on what you need today, so it it just work out right for you. Mm-hmm. But I found for myself is that I was not a good communicator at all. Actually, I had difficulty interacting with more than 3 people outside of my company. It was not the thing for me to do. But somehow I ended up by an ex-sister-in-law dragged me to Toastmasters, and I did want to go, but she talked me into it. I said, well, I want to make sure that nobody asks me any questions. Mm-hmm. I don't mind sitting there and listening, but even reluctantly, and then halfway through the meeting say, okay, John, and so tell us. I said, oh my God, so anyway, I went back the following week, and I stayed there for 10 years, and I became a distinguished Toastmaster. It was the highest level of Toastmasters. Probably less than 0.5% of Toastmasters are going to that level. For me, it was important because it involves a whole lot of other things, and it kind of changed my life between this that I found out in 1987, or when I was 57, and and saying, oh my God, and then the next one was the Toastmasters changed my life, so because I've always been, even with grade 7 3 times, I was always a good writer, and which basically said that obviously the underlying issue was ADHD, mm-hmm. Because I'm not very good at our education, that we have here, I believe that will happen by pure coincidence. I met on a plane a fellow by the name of Tom Romer, who was a professor at BCIT, Vice President of Academics of BCIT. And I met him on the plane, and I had met him before. He said, you remember me? I said, yeah, somewhat, yeah. And then I told him about the book, and then he said, yeah, we're doing work on micro-certification, which means, he said, oh my God, I need that in my book. And I said, we have to get together, and he wrote a piece for it. It basically says that a lot of people are not very good. The people that either ADHD are the ones affected by trauma. First Nation comes to mind a lot of times. Slow learners maybe because of some other circumstances, whatever it may be, the combination of all of them are not very good sitting in a classroom for 4 years. Where if you, the center micro certification is get to the core, that would take probably less than 6 months, and then add the other ones later to it, and that would help our skill sets that we need so desperately, and would change the education system. It is happening more and more, and so it touches on that in this book. So I'm going to sign this for you.
Thank you.
And then I'm to Christina, right?
That's right.
Then we'll get you a copy of the other one as well. So
great. Thank you so much.
Christina, it was a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.